Hello, my name is Benjamin Hart. I'm an American attorney and the managing director of Integrity Legal here in Bangkok, Thailand. As the title of this video suggests, we're discussing, looks like we're seeing a new policy shift within Thai immigration that is defining more the parameters around which immigration officers are going to be scrutinizing entrants to Thailand based on their past travel history. Let's just jump in here. I thought of making this video after reading a recent article from the Phuket News. That's thephuketnews.com. Article is titled, Phuket Immigration Spells Out, quote unquote, visa-free crackdown. Now, the thrust of that article goes a lot, it's quite in depth. I urge those who are watching this video, check out the Phuket News. Tip of the hat to you folks down there at the Phuket News. You guys do a good job in really fleshing all of this out. That said, under the subheadline, if you will, 150 days, quoting directly, Colonel Krian Krai said officers nationwide have now been instructed to actively monitor foreigners who appear to be using visa-free entries as a substitute for long-term residents. A typical tourist visit, he explained, usually lasts no more than 10 days, while Thailand's visa exemption scheme allows a maximum of 60 days, extendable for another 30 days, totaling 90 days. However, the practice of leaving the country briefly and returning on a new 60-day visa exemption, commonly called a visa run, has allowed some foreigners to remain in Thailand for 150 days or more in a single sequence. This, he said, is now considered abnormal. That is an important policy paradigm shift. I'm going to repeat that. This, he said, is now considered abnormal. So attempting to spend even legally, basically, you're doing it correctly. I would liken this to the attitude toward carousel visas that is inherent to US CBP in the United States, where somebody will use oftentimes a multi-entry tourist visa, which US Customs and Border Protection just routinely gives 6 months stamps on those. They don't have to, by the way. It's just what they do because it's easier to turn the crank, if you will, on the date stamp. But they routinely give 6 months on those. People think, oh, tee-hee, I can just go to Canada for 3 days and come back and get another 6 months. Yeah, they don't like that. And I would argue that is a similar policy to, the policy sort of against carousel tourist visas in the United States is similar to the paradigm being undertaken here in Thailand by immigration authorities regarding this 150 days thing. Now, I know there are those that get mad at me about this with regard to the DTV, but I'm saying it because I genuinely think that there are going to be issues with the DTV. Also, and I think I've made this somewhat clear, on a personal level, I don't think DTV is good policy, both for Thailand and for the foreigners using it. It's a nebulous visa. It makes no sense. It's not overtly work authorized. It held all this promise to the people who bought into it, and it really didn't deliver. It's sort of the worst of all worlds. It's kind of capricious now. I'm hearing a lot of things about different embassies doing different things. Point I'm trying to make is, don't be shocked if this 150-day analysis, you start seeing people with DTVs getting pulled over, if you will, and sort of asked with regard to what they're doing in Thailand, etc. Again, the DTV was not intended to live here. And these policies have a tendency to bleed broadly out into the broad immigration system, sort of like the way Trump's travel ban, the so-called Muslim ban in his first term, everybody said, oh, it's limited to this half a dozen countries or whatever it was. I said at the time, hey, that has broader implications. Guess what? It did. I think this major paradigm shift regarding being in Thailand for 150 days, and I know there are those that have said, well, DTV is an actual visa. Yeah, it was only created by Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Interior never had a say in that. Interior has its own policy objectives, and there's a disconnect there. There's going to be ramifications in the DTV slot as well as just for the standard visa exemption and tourist visa travelers. I think it's very important to point that out because these things have a tendency to grow over time. As anybody that's followed immigration for longer than 5 years can tell you, it doesn't tend to get easier. It tends to get harder. Now, you could argue the DTV sort of operated to the exception of that. Well, ask somebody who's in Thailand on a DTV who's trying to get a bank account how well that's worked out, because that wasn't the experience most of those folks were expecting in coming here on a DTV. So that's my only point with that. But the key point here is they are serious about considering this 150 days at a stretch in no other ostensible status as being abnormal. Quoting further, quote, multiple entries on visa runs resulting in a total visit of 150 days are considered abnormal. Again, that could have ramifications with respect to DTV long term too. And again, what he's saying, he's talking in generalities here. Multiple entries or visa runs resulting in a total of 150 days are considered abnormal. I can see that paradigm kind of being inherent for a while regarding anything that's not a non-immigrant visa. Somebody put up something the other day that said, oh, the DTV is a standard visa. It's not a non-immigrant visa. It's just this really long tourist visa created by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and foisted upon Interior. There's internal bureaucratic conflict that's going to result from that. Again, quoting further, we are now intensifying our enforcement. Stays exceeding 150 days or more than 2 entries must be screened to determine their exact purpose. This is my point. It may not be that they're going to turn either exempt folks away, tourist visa holders away, etc., or even DTVs. They're going to do heightened scrutiny. So people in any of these categories, I think you can all expect that you're gonna, especially where you're trying to live here in any of these categories, because none of these visas were created to live in Thailand. I can see there being heightened scrutiny on all of this stuff once you go over half a year here. Again, remember, when DTV was created, the presumption was it wasn't supposed to be for people to live here. It was a travel document that made it easy to travel the region and be a nomad in this sort of ASEAN area, if you will. That said, quoting further, Colonel Kriankrai said, quoting further, he added that visitors who fail screening may be refused entry at the airport or, if later caught working illegally, arrested, prosecuted, and have their visas revoked and be deported and blacklisted. That's another big one. They're going after work authorization violations with increasing fervor. They really are upset about that stuff. They don't like people coming in here and abusing their visas. As I've discussed in other videos, DTV is not work authorized for Thailand, as we've discussed. Interior Ministry has made that announcement some months ago. Anything that impinges upon the Thai economy, you're working illegally here. Bear that in mind. Any other type of folks, visa exemption holders, tourist visa holders, same deal. Non-immigrant business visas with work permits are sort of the standard, way of dealing with that. Again, you may be able to get a business visa on a marriage visa as well. I've done videos made contemporaneously with this one discussing work permits on different types of visas. That being said, the thing to take away from this video is, yeah, there has been a paradigm shift. We now have more defined parameters spelled out for us. If you're going to be in Thailand for 150 days or more in a given year, I think you are very, very well advised to seriously consider non-immigrant visa status if you otherwise qualify. I get it. If you don't otherwise qualify for a non-immigrant visa, you may not have the choice or the luxury of using that type of visa. But where you have the option to do it, you're going to be way better off, I think, long term than those folks who have to deal with heightened scrutiny if they may spend more than 150 days here in the Kingdom of Thailand.